For the record,
a successful budget will be to provide us with everything that we asked for and none, and I'll repeat it again, none or zero vacant positions being taken.
We talk with Dane County Sheriff Kalvin Barrett about what a budget shortfall could mean for his department. Plus,
I think there's a real opportunity right now for attorneys general to do a lot of important work.
Putting rumors to rest. Attorney General Josh Kaul announcing he will not be running for Wisconsin's next governor. Instead, why he's seeking re-election. And later, we sit down with Madison's mayor as she unveils her 2026 executive operating budget. What it could mean for your wallet. That's all coming up this morning.
We now present For the Record.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Ellie La Liberté. Well, Dane County Sheriff Kalvin Barrett says if he doesn't get more staff, the new county jail might not be able to open. With a $31 million budget shortfall, the county is looking at saving money by not filling vacant positions, meaning the sheriff's department will lose out on 17 deputies Barrett says he needs.
This will impact the sheriff's office in many ways. And number one, it starts with a lot of discussions that have been taking place in regards to taking our staffing, our vacant positions that we have. So the facts that are out there, we actually have 17 vacant positions out of 472 full sworn positions. Now that's about 3.6% vacancy rate, which isn't a lot, but there has been talks and whispers about them taking those positions to help with the budget. We need every single individual, and whether it's a deputy on patrol taking calls or a deputy walking the halls in the jail, or our record staff taking records and getting information to people for civil process information, or whether it's our social workers or mental health workers, we need everyone.
Well, it also looks like you're getting about $400,000 less right now. Again, this is the executive budget. It is not final, but $400,000 less than you requested. However, that does look like it's a little bit more than you got last year. What do you think about that as it stands right now?
I think we all understand that we're going to have to make some concessions in regards to making sure that we help everybody does their part with this deficit, but we cannot sacrifice people and we cannot sacrifice public safety. So there are things that we did take away or do in our part to help with the budget, and that included not putting in for our training expansion, for our training building out in Wanakee. That included some other positions and some other things. So there's a lot that we had to take back or scale back in order to do our part, because again, we don't ask for anything more than what we need to keep people safe.
And so where do you suggest either the personnel or the cuts come from if you were to keep 17 positions? Where would that kind of give and take come from the county, do you think?
That would be up to the decision makers and the stakeholders. I understand that the county board and the county exec has very difficult decisions to make, but I believe that public safety should be a top priority and is a top priority for constituents and for citizens here in Dane County, and that's important to consider when we're making these decisions.
And would your department be willing to give up certain things that are currently in the budget to get those positions?
Absolutely. We've given up plenty. That we did not ask for any new positions, which obviously all of our divisions need new positions to do their jobs. They put those requests in, but we did not send those requests to the county executive because we understand there's a deficit. There were also other things and concessions that we made. We removed, or we did not, or were not approved some jail mail scanning technology, which would help with safety and efficiency in our sheriff's office. So there's a lot of things that we are actually scaling back on or didn't ask for because we were aware that we were in a significant deficit.
What would be a successful budget for your department in your eyes?
A successful budget will be to provide us with everything that we asked for and none, and I'll repeat it again, none or zero vacant positions being taken to allow us to fill those so that we can properly open our new jail that's slated to open in 2027. And if we don't have the appropriate staffing, we're not going to be able to open it. So if the county board decides to start taking vacant positions, we will not be able to open that, and that will be a complete waste of $207+ million of taxpayer dollars. We will also be forced to keep the old, outdated, and borderline unconstitutional city-county building open longer than it needs to be, and we'll continue to reallocate residents to other counties, which is, again, a waste of taxpayer dollars. So number one, that is something that's very important, that we have to have that staffing to open that. But it will allow us to continue to focus on providing individuals with the help, the treatment, and rehabilitation. Again, we have to make sure that we realize that the jail was built too small. They took a floor off of the jail project about 2 years ago, and that's why we're building a 6-story, 825-bed facility and not the 7-story, 925-bed facility that was originally approved. So when the doors open, we're going to be at maximum capacity at day one.
And so how many staff do you need to make this be able to be up and running?
Yeah, so we actually had a staffing study done with the new jail proposal with the 6-story building in 2023, September, and that told us exactly what we needed. Matter of fact, that staffing study said we actually need additional staffing because in the reduction of the jail project, we took away things that created efficiencies, which now require more deputies to handle those things that once were covered in the original design.
And I also want to talk about something we saw in Madison last week, which was the first confirmed immigration rate, I should say. Can I just get your take on what the sheriff's office policy is on cooperating and communicating with ICE?
Well, obviously, we continue to cooperate with all of our federal law enforcement agencies. We understand that they're law enforcement agencies and they have a job to do. But number one, we will not be involved in any proactive roundups or taking into custody of individuals for ICE or for immigration warrants. Obviously, we've been very clear that we will not take into custody anyone on an administrative warrant alone, nor will we hold someone longer in our jail facility on an administrative warrant by itself. For us to do that, we need an arrest warrant, probable cause, or that warrant that's signed by a judge.
And so I also wanted to ask, MPD says they were unaware of ICE's presence until after they left. Were you informed of ICE's presence?
We were not informed, and that is something that poses a significant concern for us because we have to take into consideration that we do not want there to be any confusion between our law enforcement here in Dane County and federal agents. So it is important for us to be aware of their presence so that there isn't any confusion and we don't mistake them for actually committing crimes. That's why it's so important that they are readily identifiable in their vehicles. They have a clear identification of who they are, and they don't mask themselves.
Oh, I appreciate your time, Sheriff. Thanks for coming on the show
thank you so much for having me.
Now, that was a condensed version of our interview. To hear the sheriff's thoughts on the jail diversion program, you can find our full conversation up right now on channel3000.com. And healthcare premiums could increase in Wisconsin if the tax credits expire at the end of the year. That's a claim Congressman Mark Pocan made at the state capitol on Wednesday when discussing the Affordable Care Act as the government shutdown officially stretched into a week. Democrats want the credits extended in any stopgap funding measure. Republicans say they're open to negotiating the extensions, but want to address it after government funding is restored.
So we're going to make sure that we're making people understand what the shutdown's about. And just so you know, in Wisconsin, we're not going to feel the shutdown as quickly as other places. I had 85 calls all last week on the shutdown. But I've had, since the beginning of the year to last Tuesday, 14,435 calls about healthcare. So this is something people really care about.
Now, this was one of Pocan's many stops at home. He also visited the 3rd Congressional District in northwestern Wisconsin on Tuesday. And in response to the visit, Republican Congressman Derek Van Orden's office wrote in a statement to our sister station, WKBT, quote, "If Mark Pocan is so serious about health care and driving down costs, then he should be in Washington funding the government and doing his job. Instead, Pocan is in a district he was not elected to represent, angry that I won't let illegal aliens have government-funded health care when seniors and veterans don't have access to their health care as a result of the Democrats' shutdown." And to the state capitol, Tuesday, Republicans introduced and passed a legislation in the assembly aimed at relieving Wisconsin's housing affordability issues to incentivize builders, realtors, and local governments to speed up the process of building homes by tackling some setbacks. That includes making smaller lots and roads narrower. It also includes fewer sidewalks. Republicans say the legislation is necessary because current regulations are driving up costs.
The average age right now for first-time home buyers is about 39 years old. To buy a median-priced home, you need about $171,000 in income now. That's actually startling to me. So the homes that my parents were able to buy, my grandparents were able to buy, just aren't available anymore.
Democrats introduced an amendment they say would have strengthened the legislation. Republicans ultimately rejected it. Representative Randy Udell of Fitchburg released a statement reading in part, quote, "I hope that one day we will be able to tackle this complex and growing issue with the urgency and maturity it requires." Now, on Thursday, state Democrats introduced 2 bills aimed at easing the financial burden of higher education in the state. The first would provide the universities of Wisconsin and the Wisconsin Technical College System with $10 million each over the next 2 years to invest in student retention. The second would help cover tuition and fees opportunities for students in the UW system who come from homes with an income of $71,000 or less after students apply for scholarships. Now to Madison city government. Right now in Madison, there's no age limit on products that can get you high, but a city ordinance is looking to change that to 21 and up. Marijuana is illegal in Wisconsin, but hemp, which is a part of the same plant family, can have psychoactive effects. Madison Common Council President Regina Vitiver proposed that ordinance you just saw at Tuesday's Common Council meeting. It updates the age restriction and requires businesses that are selling these products to be at least a quarter a mile away from places like schools and playgrounds. Both of these only impact sales, not possession.
Right now, THC products are a little bit of the Wild West. There is no regulation over them. The state legislature has started a process. We don't know how long that'll take. We don't know how divisive that will be. But in the meantime, a lot of municipalities around the state are taking action to try to protect our citizens from these products that are totally unregulated at this point.
The proposed ordinance will go to 2 different committees before it will head back to the Common Council on November 25th. Coming up on For the Record, teacher turnover is on the decline, what the trend looks like and what spurred it when we come back. Welcome back to For the Record. This week, there are no new candidates running for governor, but rather one announcing they are not entering the race. Wisconsin Democratic Attorney General Josh Kaul put rumors to rest Tuesday, saying he's not running for governor, but instead seeking a 3rd term. Kaul is nearly 3/4 of the way through his 2nd term. In 2018, he defeated incumbent Republican Brad Schimmel for the position and also held off a challenge from Republican Eric Toney in 2022. Kaul told me why he decided to run again for AG rather than seek the governor's office.
I think there's a real opportunity right now for attorneys general to do a lot of important work. A lot of critical issues are being decided in the courts right now. And partly it was personal and thinking about being a dad and being involved in my kids' lives. So to me, having the opportunity to continue having an impact as AG is an incredible opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the campaign ahead.
And Monday, the Wisconsin Department of Justice asked a judge to immediately pause an order to verify the citizenship of all Wisconsin voters before the next statewide election in February. Kaul argued this would require a massive overhaul of the state's voter registration system. It comes as President Trump's Department of Justice has sought voter records from 26 states. That includes Wisconsin. The judge temporarily blocked a section of the order, and a hearing is scheduled for the end of the month. Now we have the first poll to give us a snapshot of where voters stand more than a year out from the gubernatorial election. Platform Communications released the Badger Battleground poll surveying 500 likely voters. Now, so far, there are 8 candidates in the Democratic primary, but 38% of voters say they're undecided. And leading the poll is former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, taking 16%. Now, Barnes is not in the race, but told media that he is strongly considering a run. Now, next in the poll, we have Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, then Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, tied with Attorney General Josh Kaul, who is not running. Now, to a much less crowded Republican primary, it shows that 34% of Republicans are undecided. Congressman Tom Tiffany leading the poll with 30%, and Washington County Executive Josh Schoeman with 4%. Now, there are also a couple of names in this poll that have not announced a bid for governor. I spoke with political analyst Brandon Scholes about that earlier this week.
In this poll, the ballot test, meaning who you're going to vote for, has really been driven by less of who's in the race and why they're in the race for governor, and more so who's people recognize their name. And so somebody whose name is on this list but not running for governor, okay, well, they get a position somewhere. But what it tells you is that it's not really an accurate reflection of voter interest of who's running for the office.
Now, this poll also looks at more than just the candidates. It takes the temperature on issues like the economy, healthcare, and crime. 95% of voters say they are concerned about the rise in political violence, and 79% say they are very concerned.
I thought those numbers were very strong. I mean, they were in the upper 90s of people who are aware of it, are concerned about it. And I think one of the things we may want to watch for as this election moves into next year, is this issue a continuing issue now intertwined with education, economy, taxes? Are people generally concerned about political violence, and would they use that as something to base their decision on who they may vote for?
And a new report from the Wisconsin Policy Forum found that teacher turnover is on a downward trend. Let's look at this graph here. You can see turnover climbing up around the pandemic and peaking in 2023. Now it's starting to move back down. Report author Sarah Saw says this could be because following the pandemic, there was low unemployment, high inflation, and COVID relief dollars, which allowed educators to negotiate.
A discouraging, surprising thing is that our smallest school districts are the district type that seems to be experiencing the most turnover. And that's both teachers, educators, principal superintendents who are leaving their jobs, but also those who are moving to other districts. And so that might not be who we think of primarily when we think of who is teenage turnover hitting the most, but those smallest districts are really getting hit hard.
Now, the report also found that principal and superintendent turnover is more unstable. You can see it here also peaking in 2023 and moving down, now climbing a little bit back up.
For me, the principal and superintendent data is perhaps even more concerning and wanting to keep an eye on what are these leaders in our education profession thinking and feeling that might lead them to continue leaving their jobs or go right back down again. We don't know with interest rates, with inflation, with the ongoing retirements of baby boomers, kind of what might be in the water there for people leaving the profession or just switching jobs.
And we saw that turnover here in South Central Wisconsin this week as Beloit School District Superintendent Dr. Willie Garrison II announced his resignation. Garrison held the superintendent role since October 2022. His resignation will be effective on December 31st. The board says it will begin the process of finding the district's next superintendent very soon. And next on For the Record, we sit down one-on-one with Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes-Conway as she releases her 2026 executive operating budget. Welcome back to For the Record. This week, Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes-Conway unveiled her nearly $453 million executive operating budget. According to her, it includes the lowest tax increase in 40 years. That means for the average home, property taxes will increase by about $30 a year. But that's compared to last year's roughly $230 a year when voters approved a levy limit increase. We sat down with the mayor this week to discuss what made this year's budget different. Obviously, last year, we had the referendum. This year, a lot more modest in comparison. So how did last year's budget set you up for this one?
We had a different conversation this year because we were able to look at, because of both the referendum and a little bit of an increase from the state funding, and we were able to look at really keeping the increase in taxes quite low, and then also strategically adding a few new investments and services.
And so last year, the levy limit was the big challenge. What was the big challenge for this year?
So the big challenge for this year was the expenditure restraint limit. And so the state gets us coming and going. They limit how much we can raise in revenue in a number of ways, including the levy limit, most prominently. They also limit how much we can spend with the expenditure restraint limit. And so if we exceed a certain level of spending, we lose a very significant amount of state funds. So that was really what we were keeping our eye on in this budget, and what the council will have to keep its eye on as it goes through the rest of the budget process and makes decisions.
And so I also want to talk about last year, departments at the city level were requested to reduce their budget by about 1%.
Yes.
This year was about 0.75, I believe.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about why the reduction?
Yeah, so we felt like we were in a slightly better financial situation and that we were able to ease up a little bit on making departments manage to a 99% budget. It's 0.25%, so it's not a whole lot that they get, but I think they were grateful for a little bit of more flexibility.
And so your budget also increases support for Metro Transit by about 35%. How will that impact services for Madison riders?
So at this point, we have a new Metro General Manager coming on, and I want to give her a chance to dig in and get to know the service and the folks and make her own decisions about what direction we're going in next. But I think what folks should expect to see over the next year or so is really just sort of settling into all of the huge changes that we've made over the past couple of years. So we did a whole route restructure. We launched Bus Rapid Transit. We have a new type of bus. We have a new bus barn. We have a new software system. We have a new payment system on the buses. So we've done a lot of change in a pretty short time. And so I think really the next phase at Metro is settling into that change, making sure everything's working, making sure that we're addressing any kinks, and that we're really tracking the rider experience and making sure that people are having a good experience riding on our buses.
And with such a growing community too, I mean, housing has been a really big issue in Madison. Can you talk me through a little bit projects, plans for that going forward? I know that's something you've talked about previously.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, this budget continues to invest significantly in our affordable housing fund. And I project that we will continue to do that for years, because that's the funds that we use to catalyze projects to support affordable housing in particular.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us, Mayor. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for helping to educate people about the budget. If folks are interested, entire budget from soup to nuts is posted at cityofmadison.com. Really encourage people to dig in and to share your thoughts with our office, but more importantly with the folks on the City Council, since now my budget will go to them. They will have a chance to amend it before they adopt it in November.
You can find the full interview on channel3000.com. For the Record, we'll be back right after this. And before you go, this is homecoming weekend for the Badgers. So if you walked past Bascom Hill and saw these pink flamingos, don't be surprised. Each plastic bird represents a donation of $5 or more for the 13th annual Fill the Hill fundraiser. The Wisconsin Foundation and Alumni Association host the event as part of the university's Day of Giving campaign. Proceeds support UW-Madison's most immediate needs across more than 100 acres of campus. And a reminder, you can watch full episodes of the show as well as expanded interviews on our website, channel3000.com. That does it for us this week. Have a great rest of your weekend. For the Record, I'm Ellie La Liberté.
This has been For the Record.